Hello everyone, welcome back to The Budget Sportsman. Thank you so much for joining me on today's video. Today we are going to be taking a look at a new budget-friendly hunting saddle that you might want to consider if you're trying to get into saddle hunting on a tight budget. And the saddle that I'm referring to is the new XOP Mutant saddle. Now before we go any further, I want to encourage you to watch all the way to the end, and you're going to learn how you can enter a giveaway to possibly win one of these saddles for yourself. Now, the XOP Mutant saddle is available for $120, and that includes the saddle, it includes your tether and lineman's ropes, and it includes 2 auto-locking carabiners. So it's pretty inexpensive, but let's dive in and find out if it's actually any good. All right, before I dive too much into the Mutant saddle here, I do want to give you some of my thoughts on past XOP saddles so you have a little bit of an idea of where I'm coming from. A couple of years ago, XOP released their first saddle, which I believe was called the Renegade, and you might remember that it was a tree stand safety harness slash saddle hybrid. It had straps over the shoulders and a connection point in the back to be able to use as a tree stand safety harness, but it also had the bridge in the front to use as a saddle. I believe it was the next year XOP came out with the Mondo, and basically the Mondo was the same thing. It was a hybrid system with the tree stand safety harness and the saddle, with some upgrades over the previous year's model, the Renegade. Now, while I think both of those saddles were a pretty good value, they were sold at a great price, and they had some good functionality if you needed to be able to swap back and forth between tree stand hunting and saddle hunting. One of my biggest complaints about both of those saddles is that they just weren't super comfortable. One of the reasons for that is when you would buy those saddles, you would get 3 ropes. And they would look something like this. I believe with the Renegade, they probably looked, with the Mondo, I think they looked exactly like this. The Renegade may have been slightly different. But you would get a rope with a sewn eye on either end, a prusik, and a carabiner. And one was for your tether, one was for your lineman, and one was for your bridge. And so what you would do is you take one end and you would girth hitch it around the bridge loop on one side, and then you would connect the carabiner to the bridge loop on the other side. The problem with this is there really wasn't a way to adjust the pressure up and down your bridge loops like you're able to do on almost every other saddle. And for me, it really did affect my ability to get comfortable in those saddles. I even said that in my past reviews is that they just simply weren't the most comfortable saddles, but I did think they were a good option for people on a tight budget or people who swapped back and forth between saddle hunting and tree stand safety harnesses. All right, so with that little bit of background out of the way, let's take a look at the Mutant saddle, because you can probably already tell this is a drastically different saddle. This is not a hybrid system. There's no tree stand safety harness part of this. This is a dedicated saddle. And I've been playing around with it. I've been sitting in it. I've been climbing trees with it. And what I have discovered is it feels to me like this is the first time that XOP has released a really legitimate saddle that's really going to be a contender in the market. You see, with the hybrid systems in the past, for me, they felt a little bit like they were solving a problem that really didn't exist. Again, at least for me, I don't swap back and forth that much. They really didn't have the comfort that I was looking for as well. Now, I did recommend them in my reviews because the price point was so affordable. But what you have here is a legitimate saddle that solves many of the problems I had with the other saddles, but also still comes in at a very incredible price point of only $120 with ropes and carabiners. So let's go ahead and walk through some of the features of the saddle. First of all, you can probably see that it is a mesh panel here. It does have a little bit of stretch in this direction from top to bottom, but does not feel like it has much stretch in the other direction, okay? Now you will also notice that it has these 2 straps right here. That's going to kind of limit the amount that it is going to be able to stretch. It's going to provide a little bit of support right down the middle back here, but overall it does stretch. I'll talk more about comfort in a minute, but I have found this saddle to be comfortable. Up here at the top, you're going to notice a row of MOLLE all across the top, as well as a row of MOLLE across the bottom. I should mention that these MOLLE seem like they're sewn just a little bit too closely together. Every saddle's a little bit different, and probably even within the same model, every unit is a little bit different. But I tried to put some tri-glides through here for my dump pouch, and they were really, really tight to get through. I did get them through, but I had to fight them just a little bit. So that's a point to note. Another thing you're going to notice is as far as like lineman's loops, there's no big open lineman's loops. This is reminiscent of back years ago. I think that one of the first saddles I reviewed was the H2 saddle, and it had a very similar system to this. So if you want to use this for your lineman's rope, you're probably going to girth hitch one side. Just be aware that on the other side, when you're going to put your carabiner in there, it is a small thing to aim for. I do think you probably could just use your main bridge loop if you wanted to, but I believe that's what that would be intended for. There is your lineman's belt. Now, one of the things you're going to see here is that they went from using that rope bridge that was openable and just came with the same ropes as everything else. So they went to I'm going to call it Amsteel. I believe on their website it's called Dyneema. Now, something that's interesting to note here is that this does feel different than some of the other bridges that I have on some of my other saddles. And I'm wondering if maybe the reason that they're calling it Dyneema rather than Amsteel is because maybe it is a different product. Maybe it's not officially the Amsteel product. And this may be one of the ways that they are cutting some costs here. I don't have any concerns about safety with it or anything like that, but that is certainly something to be aware of. Now, over here, you're going to see that, again, like many saddles on the market, you are able then to adjust this up and down. It's a Prusik on your bridge loop, and you can move it up and down. It does bite really, really well, maybe too well. It's a little bit hard to get loose. And the same thing is true here of your adjustable bridge. You can see there, I weighted this yesterday. I was climbing a tree, and it really bites. Okay, there we go. But it does move. Again, these are things that you're going to probably deal with when you're talking about a $120 saddle. You know, some of the more expensive saddles are going to come with a tender or maybe a different kind of a knot, a different system that's going to be able to move this a little bit easier. But when you're talking about a $120 saddle, this is not by any means a deal breaker to me. This is a huge upgrade over what we had on the previous XOP saddles. The ability to have an adjustable bridge like this, as well as an adjustable bridge on the bridge loops, is huge for getting comfortable in this saddle. All right, so I want to show you the waist belt and the leg straps and how to put it on. So this does not have an openable bridge, so you are going to have to step through it. And then you're going to see that this has a really nice large buckle. You're also going to notice a bit of color here on the buckle. And so when you put your buckle together, you can look through this little sight hole right there and make sure that you actually see color. And if you do, that means it is locked firmly in place. Of course, you just pull up on the tag end. It also has a nice elastic keeper here to keep the tag end firmly out of the way. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it also does have buckles for the leg straps as well. And a very similar system. They have that color and the little sight hole so you can see them. Of course, you may have just heard that click there, kind of loud, but if you want, you can push those tabs back and do it very quietly. Same thing, you can adjust up the leg straps. They have elastic keepers here to keep the tag ends neatly where you want them to be. Now, one thing that I should mention here is that these leg straps are not removable without cutting them off. Now, that doesn't matter to me because I prefer to have leg straps on my saddles, but I know some people do prefer to have a saddle without leg straps. Just be aware here that if you do want to remove these, it's going to be a permanent removal of these leg straps. All right, next up, let's take a look at the ropes that are going to come with your Mutant saddle. And you're going to get two. One is to be used for your lineman's belt and one is to be used as your tether, but they're exactly the same. So we'll just take a look at one. First of all, you're going to get a sewn eye on both ends of the rope. And the sewing or the stitching of that sewn eye is going to be covered with this tubing here. Underneath that shrink tubing, there's a little sticker. This one says XOP climbing rope, diameter 10 millimeters, MBF, which stands for minimum braking force. It's 3,500 pounds, and the manufacturing date is April 2024. Kind of nice that you have all that information right there. Then you're going to come down, and you're going to have a prusik here. Again, you have the same thing. It's a sewn loop with a heat shrink over it and a label underneath. This is XOP climbing rope, diameter 7 millimeters, MBF 3,500 pounds, and manufacture date April 2024. Now, you're going to see that this is sliding really easily right now. When you get your saddle and you first get up into the tree, you're going to want to make sure that you really dress this and cinch it down before you put your weight in it. I have put my weight in this and just had it slip. If you dress it nicely and pull it and cinch it down first, it is definitely going to hold. But again, you want to make sure it's dressed and cinched down really nicely. Overall, I think these ropes are a really nice addition and will work just fine, especially for getting started out. It does come with an aluminum carabiner. The original Renegade saddle came with very heavy steel carabiners. These are aluminum carabiners and they are auto locking. So I don't know if you can see that, but I can do it with one hand. It's just a twist and an open. And I've actually been using these carabiners that came with the Mondo kit for all of my saddle hunting about the last year or so, and really enjoy these carabiners. So this is a really nice touch to include a nice high quality auto locking carabiner with your kit. All right, so let's talk about the comfort of the Mutant saddle for a minute. If you've watched past saddle reviews from me, then you probably know that I tend to gravitate towards single panel saddles a lot of the time. They're just simple, and for my body shape and my hunting style, they tend to be very comfortable. And truth be told, the Mutant is no exception from that. I really wish I would have recorded the very first time I sat in this saddle because honestly, I was kind of blown away. I was expecting something that was maybe similar to the Renegade or the Mondo, or maybe slightly improved, but this saddle really is nothing like those other saddles. Particularly the shape, but then also the ability to adjust here at the bridge loops makes all the difference in the world to be able to get the right amount of pressure. Obviously, you have to mess with your tether height and your bridge length. That's something you're always going to mess with. But beyond that, the ability to adjust right here, the connection to your bridge loops, further down, you're going to get more pressure at the bottom. Further up, you're going to get more pressure at the top. I like a nice even pressure. Too much at the top, I feel like I'm being dumped out. Too much at the bottom, I feel like I've got too much pressure under my legs. But right now, it's just nice, even pressure. And I'm really, really impressed. Now, I'm not trying to say this is the most comfortable saddle on the market. There are some really amazing saddles out there, and some of the pleated saddles and two-panel saddles, there's a lot of great options. I'm not trying to say this is the most comfortable, but I do want to express that I am very impressed with the comfort of the XOP Mutant saddle, at least for me and my body style. All right, so I want to give you some final thoughts on the Mutant saddle, and then I'm going to tell you how you can enter a giveaway to possibly win one for yourself. So overall, I've been really impressed with this saddle. For $120 with ropes and auto-locking carabiners, I think that's a really great value. But the truth is, it goes beyond just value because this has actually proven to be, for me, a pretty comfortable saddle, and I am honestly quite impressed. But I do want to ask, what are the differences between this saddle and maybe a more expensive saddle? Well, one of the key differences is that this saddle is made overseas. If you compare this to something like a custom gear modification saddle or a Buzzard Roost saddle, I believe those saddles are made right here in the United States, and there is going to be a price difference between something made in the United States and something made overseas. You're also going to notice things like maybe just a lack of what I would call bells and whistles. You're not going to get a tender for your bridge over here, which many of the more expensive saddles are going to include something like that. You're not going to get tenders for your lineman's belt or your tether. Little features like that. The lineman's loops here they're okay, but they're not great. The Molly here, they're so just a little bit too tight. None of those things are deal breakers to me at the price point. I just want you to be aware of some of the differences between this and maybe a more expensive saddle. Overall though, again, if you're trying to get into this on a budget, I think this is a really great solid offering from XOP that far outshines the Renegade and the Mondo of the past. All right, so if you are interested in winning one of these saddles for yourself, then go down in the comment section and leave me a comment about why you think you should be the winner of the XOP Mutant saddle. Or maybe you want to leave a comment about why one of your friends, hunting buddies, or family members should be the winner of this saddle. From the time that I post this video, we're going to let this giveaway run for 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, we'll choose a winner. Be aware that I'm going to reply to your comment if you are the winner, and I'm going to ask you to email my email address with your information. If you don't respond, then I will go ahead and choose another winner. Also be aware that scams abound these days, and there may be somebody who pops in here and tries to tell you that you're a winner. If it doesn't come from the official Budget Sportsman YouTube channel account, then you're not a winner, and please don't respond to those people because I don't want anybody getting any kind of scams. It will be from my account, and I will ask you to email me with your information. All right, with all that said, I really hope you enjoyed my review of the XOP Mutant saddle. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and until next time, remember to get off YouTube and get outdoors into God's great creation.